And we're live with Maria, who's had a bump in the background, and Sanna, as we're going to go through the... Oh, yes, look at this. My stage play, Wilma Rena. It's linked above or below. So I'm going to show the profile, and we're going to go some new theory that people don't know about, because hardly anyone's bought the book, because it's only for people like me. Here it is. There we go. Oh, is that the right one? No, that's the right one. So then I will... oh, I can see it on there. Right then. Sanna, would you like to read this out and then stop with either a comment to make or something to ask me?
The whole page?
Yes. Well, you can stop whenever you want and say, Ben, what does this mean? Or I'd like to contradict that. Contradict that. So yeah, if you do with the bit where it says some idealists hold.
Okay. Some idealists hold certain contentions that they put forth dramatically whenever the occasion requires or permits them to do so. Even so, they make sure that their ways and means conform to regional norms. What's regional norms?
Well, they'll act... Well, I suppose the regional norms for manners in a specific region of...
Okay, so basically their surroundings?
Yeah. Well, in terms of... I mean, because it's written from an American point of view and because the United States is so big, there's different regional cultures, whereas countries with a smaller population are probably a little bit more homogenous, even though I shouldn't say that in terms of manners. But it basically means the manners in your region, in your subculture. Yeah.
Fair enough. Wishing as they do to sanction in a benevolent way the customs, transitions, and conventions of their companions, lest there be discordant interpersonal relations. All of them, owing to their diplomatic brain, are instinctually inclined to mediate between interactants in face-to-face situations, this in order to establish and maintain harmonious interpersonal relations. Some of them, about 1 in 4, are instinctive in contending with others, so they are aptly called diplomatic contenders, and as such tend to become efficient counselors of those who need help in deciding what to do with their lives. Like other idealists, they sooner or later get into the habit of using metaphoric words and well-being tools, whatever that is, in interacting in a diplomatic way, leaving other word and tool usage to serve secondary and to them less helpful and less vital matters.
So you brought up before about you don't like the harmony thing, but what do you do with people? I mean, you're not going around like FE break, are you? So what is your view about that?
Well, I mean, the thing I don't like about the harmony thing is just that it's not like this overall goal that some people make it sound. I don't. It's not like it's not like I like disharmony.
Would you call it one of your priorities?
No.
Yeah, because recently I remember a discussion in the group where some people said that you have to the teacher is making the child's life difficult at school, like not letting bring certain snacks and so on. And there were like 2 camps in the discussion. Some people said that you need to hold your child, be on your child's side at all costs, and some people said that you need to have pity on the teachers, and if they even if there is no very specific rule which would forbid using that snack, and if it just the teacher is just saying something that makes her own life easier, then let it be. And I would be with people who said maybe the child needs to try to be nice to her teacher, and it's one of the priorities, because teachers have a difficult life anyway, and you want to avoid fighting, because fighting doesn't help anyone really.
I would be in the middle. It would depend on the situation.
Well, for me it also depends, because there are like definitely the times when you need to contact the teacher, or like even contact the supervisor or something. But if that is not like a life or death situation, I would rather keep the peace.
I think there is a time and place. I would not say that keeping peace is my goal. I do prefer peace, but
I would,
if there needs to be, you know, disharmony, then so be it.
Well, I think in some cases this harmony is just what is needed for the like for people to get out of comfort zone and start kind of growing.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
So I wouldn't say that need to keep the pieces above everything, but in the most common case, when everybody is doing all they can already, you know, fighting is something that has to be avoided.
Yeah, I mean, I try to be nice, but I don't think I make as much of an effort as you do, from the sound of it. Like I'm usually quiet and I'm usually nice, but sometimes it doesn't work.
I think it was interesting what Maria, what I still got from Maria there when she mentioned like getting in the way of somebody's growth. So it's like, even though she resembles Enneagram Type 9, she's still got this thing of the other person's personal development is more important than the harmony in terms of what's good for their development. So you can still see the sort of like the viewpoint there of the beta NFs being about the other person's development, even if in the short term it's uncomfortable for them. If you know it's better for them, you know how much to nudge them, even if that in the short term goes against a little bit of harmony. So that was interesting hearing Maria say that, even though she identifies as a 9.
Well, nine wing 1 is kind of a difficult mix.
Yeah. Yep. Depends if a principal gets trod on.
Also, I think the creative subtypes sometimes declare more peacefulness than they actually support, because they may be the reason of some. They may be causing other people discomfort already by their like ignorative behavior. So that is kind of trying to keep the harmony in mind, maybe like overcompensation for the creatives.
Why do you think the creative subtypes are ignorative? Is it because they're focused on themselves?
Well, it's kind of an axiom. Subtypes have certain properties, like ignorative versus connective.
Oh, right, I see what you mean. Because of it's the sort of surroundings around you, whether you're connected to them or not.
Yes,
oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I got it now.
Their focus is inward. They don't really see what's around them, and they don't notice the tiny, subtle reactions.
Right, I'll just say to the audience, that's DCNH. The dominant subtype is connecting because it's dynamic. The creative one is going to be ignoring because it's like the static elements are in play with the creative, because it's not FE, a little bit FE later on, but NE and SE that are in play, and then also the not the normalizing, that's going to be ignorative as well, and the harmonious subtype, the H subtype, will be connecting as well.
Harmonizing.
Yes, harmonizing. That's it.
Yeah, you know, just today I was heading back home. Like I was walking down the street with my daughter, and I was walking backwards, because I was playing with my kids. I was catching the ball that they tossed at me, and told them that they need to warn me of any obstacles in my way. And when I just with my side vision, I noticed I almost hit a car with my back, which was like parked in the driveway. And I said, Julie, why didn't you tell me there was a car? She said, I didn't see it. Although she's an ESFP and she's supposed to see all that. But it's also the subtype thing.
Right.
When she's focusing on the game, her mind edits it out.
Right.
So she will like hear alarm or something like that if she's focusing on something.
Right. So there's a little bit of digression from Keirsey temperament theory, but it's excellent stuff. So if and I will go towards what is excellent. So for example, if there's say a dominant subtype of an NE DOM, ENFP and ENTP, are they likely to be? Well, they're more connected with their environment because it's an accentuation of a dynamic element in either TE or FE. So does that mean that they will appear to be better at extroverted sensing than, say, other subtypes?
Probably. It depends on like what you mean by being better.
It's sort of like just more observant of the world. Like they might seem less like their heads are in the cloud.
Yeah, but and they also like will seem less intuitive.
Yes. Yeah. Oh. I don't know my subtype, so I don't really.
My son ISTP is very much in his head because but he's like he still has that connective thing about it about him.
Right. Yeah. So basically, what Victor did, I'll just let people know what Victor did is he sort of took the dichotomies and he sort of recast them in different ways for the subtype system. So, for example, with extroversion and introversion, he would say that for the reserved extroverts, he would say that they were distant rather than contact. And so the contact subtype is more likely to initial social contact. And then the other one is the opposite of that. I can't remember what the name is. And what he did is static and dynamic. He changed to connecting and ignoring in terms of the environment. And then what was the other dichotomy? I can't remember. Oh yes, static dynamic. Oh yes, if someone was more J or more P, was if they were more terminating or initiating. So it was like more likely to start a project than to finish it, and those that were more likely to finish it than to start it. And that's how you get the different degrees in a subtype. So for instance, you can get an ENTP that's a little bit more J-ish than other ENTPs because they've got stronger TE. And so there'll be a bit more about completing projects and they'll be a bit more dominant. And so probably appear less E7-ish as well. So then, now we have this thing. Now, so this is the type in a social role that fits their abilities well. And so this isn't about how far the type is away from them in terms of cognition. This is about how far they're away from them in terms of what they do well. So, for example, in the case of LII, INTP, Keirsey would say that the thing that they would find hardest to do would be to be a supervisor, sort of like in the role of LSE, because you've got to be and you've actually got to be sort of like aggressively supervising people. And that actually, in terms of what, and Keirsey would say that, well, INTPs can do the things that an ESFP can do well, even though the cognition is very different. So, for example, we've got various INTPs that are doing YouTube videos and presenting and like being like a performer. So when Bradley is doing it, and when Emily is doing it, and when Laura is doing it, I think that we find that easier than, say, being a bossy supervisor. So these are about how far the role enactments are away from each other. So Sanna, would it be difficult for you to be, because I think you said before that you're not a great actress.
No, I'm not. I actually can't act at all. Like it'll be completely fake.
I think you were okay though when you did this surprise visit in the when we did the whiteboard, the INFJ, the Model G.
Probably because I didn't need to act.
Yes, because like I deliberately said something that was that was weird. That was going towards the superpowers.
It's easy to react to it.
Yes.
I think for INFJ are very like authentic. So either it's their primary interest, like acting, or they cannot act at all because they would be fake. But they can recognize bad acting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, with that FE, yeah. Because they're continually in the mode of focusing on other people. They get a sort of a guideline of what is authentic and inauthentic emotions. And so they have all that experience just builds up, and then so they can recognize it. And so before other types, or before most other types, they're going to recognize. But it took me ages to learn bad acting, and now I can't flipping avoid it. So we've got here, in terms of the roles, so we've got those that are confrontative. So Sanna can be a little bit confrontative. It doesn't mind. Doesn't matter. I find it amusing. And so can Inspector, and so can INTJ in their way. And so can... We'll have to ignore Inspector and Crafter because they don't quite switch over to Socionics. But would it be fair to say, Sanna, that are there some similarities between you and Enrique in how you interact with people?
Well, other than the fact that his people skills are not very awesome.
Well, I mean, in terms of like directing people and like that kind of thing.
He's definitely directive.
Yeah, it's just that you're better at being directive.
Well, he doesn't like to deal with people. That's the thing. But when he does, then he's going to be directive.
Yeah. And I think part of that is because usually when an INTJ mastermind is talking to people, it's because they want something. And usually the thing that they want is a certain thing achieved. And so they're sort of talking to them for TE reasons.
Because he's going to be doing it because he has to.
Or it's the inner circle of the people that they actually like. And that's where you see the other side.
Yeah, but that's completely different. Yeah, that doesn't.
Yeah, that's just with all interest types. I think inner circle is special. Yeah. It usually has to do with the interest.
Okay, so Maria, which are the interest types?
It's all types which have like weak. Basically, it's introverted intuitives. I came up with the like mnemonic rule for memorizing which types are which interest group, which motivation group.
Yep.
You need to look at the function, like weak function they have in common. Like for instance, suggestive and break are both weak functions.
Yep.
And if you have certain weak functions in common, it gives you certain motivation specifics, like interest types, because they are not very, like, they don't have a lot of willpower. They focus on the stuff that draws them naturally.
Right. So, gotcha. So the stuff that So they have to be interested in order to do it.
To actually function.
Yeah.
Wait, that's the case for all introverted intuitives?
Yeah.
Okay.
So to do their best job, they really need to be interested in something genuinely.
Is that not the case for other types?
Well, introverted intuitives are the interest group, and other motivation groups would be status, abundance, and what is it? Uniqueness.
Uniqueness.
Ooh.
That's interesting.
Extroverted intuitives are the uniqueness motivation group. They want
What's the uniqueness one? Which types?
Extroverted intuitives: ENTP, ENFP, ENTJ, ENFJ.
Okay.
Wow. Well,
that's something to remember about, like contemporary art in the US. People do all sorts of weird stuff just to make something different from another person.
Right. So the one view that we have at the moment, this is the complicated typological stuff that you're not going to get anywhere else. The in-depth Keirsey theory, a new cutting-edge Socionics theory in English. Because the Russians would have known this years ago. Russian speakers, sorry. My apologies to the Ukrainians. What we got here? Right, so I'll just quickly go through this before we get onto the type. This is just like INTP stuff about. So you got the preemptive initiators, as you can see there. They are the in-charge types in Berens. Sanna, did you recently watch the interaction styles thing? I think you were part of it. I can't remember. Were you in that event?
I was in that event, yeah.
Right, okay. So yeah, so the preemptive initiators, the in-charge ones, ENFJ, ESTJ, ENTJ, ESTP. Is it fair to say that those are in charge, those four?
I think you can say that, yeah.
Right. At least of their temperament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how I.E.I is going to be in charge. Like, what kind of... Is it just the energy level? They're going to be getting stuff done?
Well, they do tend to lead people, don't they?
Do they? Because I don't really know that many.
Yeah.
Are we talking about I.E.I?
No, E.I.E.
E.I.E.
Yeah.
Yeah, mentor. Yeah, it was just because in Berens and Keirsey, they're known as an in-charge type. Well, sort of like the most assertive one of the NFs. And plus, they are beta quadra as well, so they're going to have that extra bit of assertiveness. Yeah,
they have good leadership qualities. They kind of learn it early on. Yeah.
And you can easily see it with the other three. And the other three are the most likely types to also be Enneagram 8. ESTJ. Or what I sort of mean by that is, like, if you looked at all the 8s and gave them a test, most of them are going to be like ESTJ, ESTP, and ESTP. We got here. Right. One interesting thing here, especially for Bradley and me, this one, responsive accommodators. So you got Bradley here, who is a he resembles INTP, he resembles I.E.I, and so the way he approaches music, so say composing there, is just a little bit off to the side of designing. And so it's so composing and designing are very similar. Also, what is quite close to there is you've got reconciler, INFP, and Bradley also has INFP qualities, and I do as well. So it's interesting how these sort of things are near to us in terms of what people are good at. That they're quite close to me to Bradley and me in terms of composing, and I wouldn't say reconciling. Well, maybe a little bit. But that's the accommodating interaction style there.
Are those NF qualities related to your subtype or something?
I reckon so. I mean, if somebody is, if you're an if somebody were an INTP resembler and they were, say, harmonizing subtype, I would think that someone who's more into like the harmony. Although, see, I don't really know if if all harmonizing subtypes are more into the actual harmony with people, or if it more refers to just sort of blending into their environments because
I would say that they're firstly into harmony with themselves.
Ah.
They first need to find internal harmony, and then they may like fight over that with everybody else.
Well, is that internal harmony like Enneagram 9, or is it something else?
It's something else. I would say I remember a good example of. I was reading like a biopic about the architect Frank Lloyd Wright, and there was a chapter where he was settling in Paris, and he was already in like the most expensive hotel, and he had to rearrange all the furniture and pull off the curtains, and like he left no stone untouched, because he's generally was described as a harmonizing subtype of INFJ. Very sensitive to everything like clothes and food and whatnot, and relationships too. But most of all, since it's a connective subtype, and it's more visual than other subtypes, they have higher demands. So sometimes it gets in the way of actual harmony with the people.
How do I figure out my subtype?
Well, you can go by dichotomies, but the complicating thing would be that you need to see when you are like most like yourself, or when or otherwise, like there are occasions when you're shifting, so that affects subtype as well. But for instance, I never had doubts about my subtype, although there are some like when I was taking the test, and I think that I don't remember if the test exists in English. Ben should be able to say that, but I had like 2/3 of creative subtype and 1/3 of normalizing. My answers were, but I just knew it about myself because I'm just a very ADHD style person.
Yes. So Maria, is my subtype obvious, and what about me points to my subtype?
I don't know you on the lifestyle level. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
With most, like harmonizers are mostly struggling with the surroundings. They need to kind of bring the surroundings to the point that where they're okay with them.
Well, that's probably not me then.
Right. So
yeah, also harmonizers are known to be like nice people that everybody wants to hang out with.
I wish.
People tend to like them for like no obvious reason.
Oh, that's probably my father.
Oh yes, because you said that. So there's even though it's different things, because I think you said that your father, Sanna, identifies as, or you would put him into the E9 category.
I think he's E7 with a NiFx.
Right. So ENTP for her father, folks, a developed one.
But he's very E7, I think. Right. But he's one of those people that everybody likes, basically, if they meet him.
Well, I don't know. Many ENTP have like one of their fixes is 9.
Yeah, it definitely is for him, I think.
And well, ESTP and ENTP kind of want everybody to like them, so it's one of the reasons too. But a creative person would probably find a way to to spoil it with some people.
Well, I'd like to find out my subtype at some point.
Yeah, well, we can do a hangout on that in future. We can make it a private one, right?
Okay.
So, even public if you like. It all depends on what you want. So,
I can say out front that I'm not as familiar with the terminating subtypes, because most of my for genetic or other like personal preference reasons, most people I know are either creative or harmonizing.
right, so the terminating subtypes, folks, are those which are normalizing and dominant. So the ones that have got accentuated judging functions. Right.
Okay.
Right then. So, Sanna, you admire the SPs and the SE ego types, and so you're probably. But do you think that the things that they do well are difficult for you to do well?
Well, I'm not sure if admire is the right word. Maybe respect, but yeah, yeah, definitely. I see it all the time with my SE ego friends, and they don't really seem to get that those things that are easy for them are not easy for me.
Yeah. So,
like paying attention to your surroundings on a consistently automatic basis, that's not easy for me.
and I suppose from the Keirsey point of view, what the artisans are good at is improvising in the moment and also being expedient, knowing that right move in the moment and able to take a quick action, think on your feet. So do you admire people who think on your feet and wish you could think on your feet quicker in certain ways?
Yes, I tend to have to take too long to think of a response in a situation where it should be instant to be effective. And that's very frustrating. Like I had a recent interaction with a doctor where I really should have been able to do that. And it was frustrating because I kind of locked up instead of reacting right away. It took me like half an hour before I was able to say what I had to say.
And this would also say that in terms of the intelligences, NFs have in common with the NTs the abstract thoughts. And so it's not that hard for NFs to do like sciencey stuff and technological stuff when it's more abstract, because artisans can do that as well, but they're using it more as a tool for those things. Whereas NFs can do the abstraction, can basically act NT-ish, and Maria is an example of that. And the idea is that they can also act SJ-ish because they're sort of cooperative. And so we had a bit of that beforehand where we were talking about food and stuff. So the role function, the role SI can be gone to in terms of like just about get by with the suppliers and things like that. The logistics of living.
I suppose the difference for me is that I'm genuinely interested in a lot of the NT stuff, so I will dabble in it.
Yeah.
Because I want to, but the SJ stuff is things that I have to do that I really don't want to do.
Yeah. But are you still better at that though than the SP stuff?
Can you remind me what your Enneagram type is, Sanna?
Enneagram 4.
Mm-hmm.
469.
Mm-hmm.
What's your stacking as well, Sanna, for Maria?
SXSP.
Okay.
Right. So
I think I'm decent when it comes to the SJ stuff. It's just that I tend to ignore it as far as I can.
Yeah.
Before I do it.
Right. Right. So that's just sort of making it solid. Just Keirsey's ideas that it's difficult for NFs to do the SP things well, because SPs are naturally adaptive in the moment, not thinking about whether it's consistent with their values and something, and also they're also very sensory based, and they're very adaptive in the moment, whereas NFs will have a focus on things being congruent with who they are. So there's a bit of a distance there.
I think I've been recently, in the recent years, I started to integrate the what you would call SP stuff.
Good.
Which doesn't make me awesome, but it's definitely, before that, it was not a part of my life. Now it's kind of a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
what specifically are you referring to? As a species?
Well, a lot of it has to do with becoming more assertive and kind of not, it's hard to describe, just kind of not caring as much about the long term or what do people think about me, but just going for what I think I should be doing without letting other people choose for me. And I think that's I think it's a lot of it has been SE development for me.
Yeah, I noticed that I'm kind of getting old and kind of assertive in the way that our department chairman once said, my age of popularity is over. So that's how I feel lately. So I'm not afraid to make a fool of myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it for me is too that I care less about what people think.
Yeah, at the children's school, I came to have lunch with my kids, and we took some spot at the table, and it was, I think, the busiest time, and I noticed there was a family kind of sitting on the side and kind of anxiously watching people at the table. Like, I figured they were wondering if there is space for them. So I went around the table and I tried to kind of ask everybody politely to kind of shuffle until there was a spot for those two people. And I did it like in 5 minutes. There was another family that also was looking at everybody's backs and wondering if there's space, and I went around the second time.
Maria, so is that a thing?
I wonder if you would call it SJ thing or SP thing.
I was wondering then, because I recently looked at the Model G NiFx profile. Do you think that the bravery and assertiveness of the I.E.I. is pretty much associated with, if they see somebody else in trouble, then they will assert themselves to help that person?
I was actually just about to ask for that, because that is something that that's something I've always done. It's easier to assert myself for other people than it has been traditionally for my own sake, and now I'm learning to do it for myself as well.
Yeah, I would say that it's kind of the easy part for me as well, because it's the I think it's the parent FE, when you are not as concerned about like your emotional status or like your sort of power field. You don't care whether you're popular or not, because you know you will figure it out.
Yeah, because it's the right thing to do.
You can do something that is unpopular or like questionable if you know like your intention is good, because you know how to gain it back.
So Maria, when you said parent FE, is that like the BB term?
In BB terms,
right?
Yeah, it's your demonstrative or parent function.
Right.
Something you use mostly for other people's sake.
Right. This is advanced typology, folks. Socionics, advanced Keirsey theory, and BB.
What do you mean by using it for others' sake?
I think calling it a parent function is very apt because people tend to be very use it in a protective way. Use it for somebody else's sake.
You mean
like
protective towards protecting other people with it?
Yeah. For instance, you can stand up for somebody who did who is currently unpopular, and help them explain themselves, or be on their side until everybody believes they're not as bad as they seem.
So is that going to be the FE, SE working together?
Well, you need SE to in many cases you also need SE because you before you do something dramatic, you may have concerns about who am I to do this? I'm a nobody. What difference does it make? That's the SE concern, and that's what actually gets better with time.
Plus, it's easier. I don't really consider that if I'm protective of another person, because in that situation, it doesn't matter who I am. It just matters that I see they need help.
Well, there is one moment about that. For instance, if your size in the group, like relative size or relative weight in the company or group or society is very small, you by coming to somebody's defense, you may even make them look ridiculous. Am I right?
Possibly. I've never actually been in that particular situation, so I'm trying to.
I think that's something that we sometimes consider. And I think the status part of this tends to improve after a while, after a while of being in a certain group, because we gain momentum and gain certain status. But we go from doing something with kind of bitterly and with putting a lot of vulnerability into that, to being able to do it without any second thoughts.
Is SE for us? Is SE something that you see developing?
Yes, of course. I think that's something that people have interest in developing since they're very young, basically children, and because you cannot develop it for good. You have to redevelop it every so often. So it gets developed all your life.
So you have to keep using it. Is that what you're saying?
You have to keep using and developing it.
So it's a bit like the role function then. It has to keep it in practice. Yeah.
Well, the role function development is kind of automatic because you cannot stop living your life and dealing with those issues.
Yeah, and plus if you're in that mindset as well, because it's the other side, it's the other half of the mindset. So for example, if you're say FINX, the humanist, is that if you're constantly thinking about if you're having feelings about things, well, you're going to analyze those feelings, and you're going to be switching between FI and TI all the while, because you're in that mindset of internal subjective rationalizing.
So basically FE and SC kind of work together
Yes, especially I would say in NFJs because it's for other people. And we have an instance of this where, Sanna, you don't have the energy to promote your own artwork because you're doing it for yourself. But if it was for somebody else, you would have more energy for them.
Yeah, I would still be bad at it, but it would be better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of these things. What it might... Oh, Maria, I have a question for you. Do you think that other people, that when the INFJ is focused on other people, it might make them shift more easily to, say, the supervisee shift where they act like ESFJ in helping people? And so, because then you got the FE with the SE?
I think the most common shifts which have to do with other people, and the most automatic shifts at that, are the mirage shifts, like the group work, and the extinguishing shift, which have to do like working with a partner or behaving under attack. Yeah, I'll excuse myself for a moment.
That's okay. So the mirage shift for INFJ is going to be square 8 to square 7. So it's when you shift to acting like ENTP, apparently. And mirage shift for me would be TESE, so square 8 to square 7. So apparently I can sometimes act like an ESTJ. Weirdness. Maybe it's organizing all these hangouts and stuff. Maybe that could be administrative hangouts. I don't know. But yes. We'll now move on to the next page. So this is just a little example. We'll get to this in a moment. So we've got creative slot with FI in it, demonstrative slot with FE in it. Right, and that's going to be the part of the next slide. Yeah, this is the wrong way. The wrong way around. That should be on the other way. Right, so this is where it gets good now. It gets less INTP and more good. Okay, I'll read through this next paragraph and then I'll let Sanna take over when it gets to about paragraph number 7, because that's an interesting point in this. Counselors are like their mentor twins, the educators, so ENFJ, in that both are directive, the one giving advice, the other directives. Both counselors, that sentence is all a bit, yeah, okay, yeah, ENFJ directive, counselor is more in terms of giving advice, in that, yes, because someone will come to them to advice. And I think you said something similar, Sanna, where once somebody comes to you and it's like, okay, now I'm in the counselor mode, then you get directive, whereas ENFJ is more likely to be directive with a larger scope of people. Is that fair to say?
Well, for me, that's correct. I don't know about EIE. I need more EIEs to observe before I can comment on them.
Well, I think our strong FI is sort of backing up the directiveness. Like when you, and also the launch TI. I don't know how else to explain it, but I remember that I could actually tell people what to do even when I was fairly young.
That's a great point you made there about FI, Maria, because I sort of correlate FI to rapport, in that when to gain rapport, you've got to be on the same level. So if you're giving people directions, it's hard to be in rapport with them at the same time. So you've got the INFJ, you've got the NI with the FI, so you want to get in rapport with people to make them feel closer and that you understand them and things like that. Whereas with ENFJ, it's a bit more of, I'm the leader, you're the followers. I'm being charismatic and leading you. So it's a little bit more of a, it's not quite as equal a relationship as you get with.
Well, yeah, ENFJ, they're kind of charming and they make people want to do things they tell.
Yeah, I think for counselors, there has I don't know which judging function is doing the determining of what they need to do. Like there has to be something, but I also think SE plays a role because it has to be sort of a little bit assertive, pushy sometimes.
Yeah, like I said, we develop this quality early on, and we can exercise it.
I didn't develop it early on because I was raised very Delta-ish. So it took me a long time to realize that this is actually me. So I'm only recently practicing.
I'll just say from what Dario Nardi has shown is from his EEG research is that once the Beatons get to sort of like midlife, they start looking like each other in their brain activity.
I would be very surprised if I'm at that point yet. I don't think I'm anywhere near, but I'm trying.
Yeah. What we got here? Oh yeah, mentor twins. All right. Okay. Here's a better theory. I got it. This is where it gets into INTP mode. Right. This is where Keirsey has gone INTP. Like difference in between intersecting roles and interlinking roles. This is the kind of things that INTP resemblers will think about. Okay. Counselors like mentor twins, the educators, are both directive, the one giving advice, the other directives. But counselors are intersecting rather than interlinking directors, in which case director and directee do the same things, such that what the directee does coincides with what the directee does, like a pair of tennis players in doubles. Right. Okay. I would think that with an ENFJ, the way I interpret this is, with an ENFJ, it's much clearer that they are leading and the other person is following. Whereas when it's INFJ, it's almost like they come to you for advice, and it's like, how are we going to solve this problem together? Rather than you being as much in charge as, say, ENFJ, where it's like, they're the leader, they're the follower. Whereas with INFJ, it's like, well, we're sort of on the same level, but I'm guiding you. And so and they're trying to solve the same problem. And so the idea is that their roles intersect and that you're also battling not just with the problem, but with them.
Well, it's definitely not about leading, because you don't tell people what to do and expect them to do it. You have to get them to realize for themselves that this is how they work, and hence this is what they should be doing to resolve their issue. So you're more like prodding and, you know, pushing them in the right direction to trigger a insight of some kind that makes them move forward. So
I think what INFJs do is give explanations, but they kind of word it for you, like what may be going on, but that explanation is also like contaminated by FI. So we give people gentle push toward like what we feel is right.
Oh, I definitely do. I mean, I definitely push. It's like, but it's very, it's not very obvious. Like they may not even realize that they're being pushed.
I think Russians have a saying. They say a person is making you a soft bed, which is hard to sleep in. I would say that about INFJs because they're very kind of subtle and gentle with a person, but then you never doubt what they feel is right, and that kind of gives you not a lot of leeway.
Yeah, I mean, you're soft, but you don't let them go easy. Mm-hmm. You're still going to make sure that they can't stop. evolving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I meant, and I think that's a good metaphor for that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then I understood what you meant.
Mira, I have a question for you. Do you think, because this on the page is about rapport, do you think that the INFJ is more into rapport than the ENFJ?
More into what?
Rapport. It's that this thing described on the screen.
Yeah, report. Well, I can't say for sure because again I'm an ignorative subtype, and for me it's more on a conceptual level. You establish rapport. If you're like that, you don't really do it on like a physical level a lot, but you can mimic the language of the person to make them feel more comfortable. And some people actually love that. A lot of people love that when you're basically speaking with their own words.
So yeah, you have to adjust your language.
Yeah, but you got to do it skillfully. So INTJs out there, don't do it in a cack-handed way, because the way we do it, if we're not skillful, it'll sound like we're mocking the person by repeating everything that they're saying.
I think current I.E.I. it's kind of natural.
Don't look like they're mocking you.
Pardon?
I was saying INFJ don't typically look like they're mocking you.
Well, no, they're skilled in that area. That's what I mean. It's like there's understanding the skill, but then there's being able to implement it.
I think I.E.I. will, well, I mean, at least I do, will kind of automatically, without even thinking about it, adjust to the person they are interacting with. Right.
And that's a big part of the FE. Maria, would you say that your kind of empathy is more cognitive based? I mean, it would coincide with your interest in typology and psychology.
I think part of it has to do with our being collectivists, and we're like really, really collectivist in the sense that we take the interest of the person seriously, and we because of the creative FI, we usually know what a person values or like deems important. So that's part of the thing. I need to go away for a second, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. All right then. Right, because I do think that, and this is just a bit about calibration, I do think that INFJs are more into rapport than ENFJs. ENFJs are more into being charismatic.
Probably, because it's more one way for them, maybe.
That's the thing. That's the thing. And that's one of the things that Linda Behrens came up with. And I thought, yes, she's exactly right. Where she talks about when somebody is directive, it implies a one-up, one-down relationship between the director and the directee. Whereas those people are informing, they try to meet people at the level. And so that makes you think about, well, you would think, well, all SE types, they should be directive because of the SE. But if you look at the way that ESFP operates, all of the FI ego types are informing. And what's FI? What is associated with FI? Rapport. All the FI ego types are into rapport. And it makes sense. If it's ethics of relations, then you've got to sort of meet the person at their level and get that rapport. Right. That's sort of like a different concept coming in with different things. This is some notes I made about the idea of caliber. It's very much like FE is, like I say, you have an idea for each person. You probably have a good idea when a loved one is feeling a little sure, very unhappy, because you know that person. So it's almost as if you've calibrated that person.
Yeah, that's probably the thing that I.E.I. does kind of automatically.
Yeah.
Quickly establishing where the other person stands, and then approaches them accordingly.
Yeah. So basically, this is all stuff that feeling types will do naturally, and then there's all the stuff about setting goals and all of that lot is the stuff that other types won't do naturally. But what have we got here? Right, so basically just experience. And it's just as you said about noticing bad acting and stuff like that.
I don't even know if I do, honestly. I'm not really. I don't normally try to judge that kind of detail.
I would say that I can, but it's not something terribly important for me.
Right.
Yeah, I just don't care normally.
For me, when it's so bad, it's like you notice it within seconds. It's like, oh, get that. To me, it's like somebody who can't sing.
Well, yeah, if it's really, really bad, but then the whole thing is probably gonna be bad. I mean, I can forgive bad acting if the story is something I'm interested in.
Right.
At least a lot of it.
Exactly. I remember an INFJ complaining about a singer who was singing a song with a very poignant theme in a very like uniformly happy voice. And I said to myself, okay, that's too bad, of course, because some people, like, it's important for some people, but for me, the message of like, it was important that through that singer, who is like acceptable quality to me, I got to know the song, which has a very important message. I think that's exactly what Sanna is talking about. The acting is not as important as what they're trying to convey.
Ooh. Oh, a little bit different. It's like, I want a really good singer.
There's an echo right now.
Yeah. I think it's gone away. There's an interesting point here. Yes, about your tenacity, Sanna, about the tenacity of the INFJs. So this is an interesting bit. Thus, intersecting directors, counselors are like their clients, contending with obstacles facing their clients. And as you said before, you're not directing them as much as ENFJ because you're sort of more on the same level. And then you've got the different kinds of contending. So ICJ, ISTP, INTJ. It requires tenacity. Thus, to hold to and put forth their contentions, the counsellors must be persistent. Are you persistent, Sanna?
When it comes to, well, okay, if we take the counseling situation,
yeah,
and I know where they need to go, I'm definitely persistent because I know that they're not going to get there overnight. It's going to be a long road most of the time. So it's more like adjusting while they're getting there, making sure that they more or less stay on the path in the right direction.
Потому что я не могу зайти на саму площадку, потому что
just right then. I was
gonna if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's fine. You can mute and unmute whenever you like, Maria.
Yeah. What I noticed about INTJ and INFJ, like both of them, they usually will not tell you, like, if they decided that you are someone they care about, they will not normally tell you, well, you want to talk about this? I'm not interested in this right now. While some other people will, and they will not think it affects a relationship. Because INTJ and INFJ have the control function, in common, which is an E.
Yeah.
Like your circumstances and your interests is something they kind of automatically invest in if they decide you are their person.
Right.
Well, INTJ may be like less nice about it, but still, like they the reason they are called like they have the stalkerish qualities, is that they try to follow the person of their choice wherever that person invests in. Like they track what they do and like what basically their situation is, their interest rate. So that's part of report as well.
Right.
I was just saying that part of it is not necessarily like feeling type thing. It may have to do with different stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. That's what's in this bit. It's basically a feeling of something that's in common with the person. And it's going to vary depending on type. So my hypothesis would be that for NFs, especially the Delta NFs, it's really going to be more about values, feeling that somebody really has the same values as you. And for other people, it'd be different things that they feel is important that they have in common with the person. And there's a lot of subjectivity in there as well. Like they might see one thing as in common and then project other things into the person that they want them to have in common as well, because they want the connection. And this is why you can have these things where you have these relationships where people are in love for a certain amount of time and then they learn more about the person and they get less and they fall out of love because they realize that there is a difference between who the person is and who they thought the person was at the beginning, because they had projected characteristics of their ideal man or woman into that other person. So that's a part of that then. So then, here is a good bit, in my opinion. That is why I circled it in pink. Right, so, what have we got? Am I on that square? Yes. Depending on the kind of brain they're born with, there are 4 different kinds of contending, each able to succeed and enact and pursue the career corresponding to their strong suits, whether tactical crafting, analytical inspection, strategic arranger, and in this case, now here is the good bit, and this bit relates to FE and FI in the corresponding type in Socionics. So we've got here, and this is about the mode of when they use FE and when they don't, and how it can get in the way. I would like Sanna's thoughts on this once I've gone through it. Because this is really good, this bit. So in fact, you can read it through, Sanna. Can you read the bit where it says paragraph number 7?
Okay.
And stop whenever you want to comment.
Okay. Or maybe I'll just read the whole thing and then comment.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Because enacting the contender role takes a good deal of energy and determination, it is difficult for diplomatic contenders to switch from the attentive to the expressive mode of interaction. So the diplomatic contenders are challenged to express themselves while paying close attention to others. Thus, diplomatic contenders are not very expressive when doing so is not on their agenda. It is not so much that they do not wish to express themselves, it is rather, when doing so, attending so closely to advisees interferes with what they are trying to accomplish. After all, giving unsolicited advice is not the same as giving solicited attention. On the other hand, if they're paying attention to a client is vital to the advice they're giving a client, then it is not only easy for them to give advice to their client, but imperative that they do so.
All right then. I'll give you my interpretation of that. My interpretation of that, and then I'll let you come in. My interpretation of that is like, it's almost as if, so I'll put there, to switch from NiFi social mission. So I'm thinking that when you're sort of like listening to a client, it's like you got the NI thing going on and the FI thing in terms of like getting that rapport, getting that connection, concentrating on the other person. And whilst you're doing that, you're not doing the FE thing of the expressivity because you're so concentrated on them. And almost that would be like a different mode when you're doing the FE thing. And I once did a hangout with Crystal. It was about 3 hours, and it was on the creative FI in I.E.I. And it was about these 2 modes that she was in. when the sort of difference between when she was counseling someone and then she was like teaching a class of kids, and just how exhausting she found it was, and how she was in a different mode. And so there was a difference between, say, NiFi mode and NiFe mode. Over to you, Sanna.
I think I have I think I have those two modes. I would say that the NiFi is probably my most common. And I'm not super expressive for the most part. But the closer the person I am, whether I'm counseling or not, the more expressive I will be as well. There has to be trust.
Right.
And when there is trust and there is connection, then I start being more expressive as well.
Oh, and also, is that expressivity very much situation dependent? In that, what I sort of mean by that is, like, if you think that this person really needs you to get very expressive with them, to shove them in a way, if you have a feeling that that's the right thing to do, then you sort of do it because of that? Or is it just something that happens in the moment?
I think it just happens because it means that I'm more comfortable with that person. It doesn't matter if it's a counseling situation, if I'm trying to help a friend, or if I'm just being with them, talking to them. It just has to do with how comfortable I feel with them.
Right, that makes sense. Also, especially if you're going into SE mode with FE, it's very much in the moment, concentrating on their emotions and reacting in the moment, all natural stuff.
Yeah, but that's when I'm doing kind of passive FE, as in I'm paying attention to them with FE.
Yeah.
And then depending on what I sense, I'm going to be applying various levels of SE to get them to kind of push them in the direction they should be going, in my opinion. But that's not going to be expressive FE on my part for the most part.
Right. So I think that corresponds nicely with what Keirsey's written here about when they're in that mode. And then later on in this profile, he talks about this type, which would be, so when you're talking about the type, it would be diplomatic contender. When he's talking about the role, he talks about the mentor counselor. What we got for the next one? Here we go. So this is comparing other roles. Given their fitness for the counselor role, why are they not equally suited for the educator, advocator, and reconciler role? It is because the work done in these differing pursuits cannot be equal. The actions most practiced, whether instrumental or interpersonal, end up more highly developed than in others. What then of the 12 other tactical, logistical, and strategic roles? The diplomatic brain does not lend itself to these roles nearly as much as it lends itself to the diplomatic roles. However, since idealists are like guardians in making sure their use of words and tools are in compliance with regional norms, whatever outcome they may seek, it is probable that logistical roles will develop more than tactical. There's a bit I've written down the side. Yes, FE versus FI. Ask Sanna about this. Well, that's been done. What I got? FE related. In NiFx, ethics of emotions is their strongest function at close psychological range. And I think, as Sanna said there, at close psychological range, she does that.
Oh, yeah. I would back that because that's something I exercise a lot with my kids, because it's kind of a close range and kind of a safe domain. And you feel the need to do so because, like, to actually teach something. And INFJs have to teach others, at least because of their primary concerns, that nobody has to be wasting their time, right? That's what INFJ are primarily concerned about. Nobody has to be wasting. If there's nothing productive to be done, at least people have to be educating themselves. And for education, the first pitch you make is like, look at this, isn't this awesome? So you use your FE to kind of play an enthusiast.
I think that's true, actually.
That's
Yeah,
why
you
Keirsey,
can.
that's why
I will
Keirsey has the
share
NFT.
things
Yeah, go on.
that I'm excited about, and I will, you know, try to get people to be excited about them as well.
As Mura said, information types, the INs. Yeah, because it's like they're doubly abstract because they're both in both introverted and intuitive, so it's sort of like doubly non-concrete. And also again, they're both in the mentor role. So Keirsey mentions this later on that what switching to the teaching mode is not so far away for the INFJ.
Yeah, but it is sort of energy consuming because
Yes.
you kind of need to wind yourself up because technically, like for me, things are not as uniformly exciting as I want to present them.
I think for the J's that whenever you go from that, you got that massive difference in energy. So, for example, between INTJ and ENTJ, between INFJ and ENFJ, you got that big difference in energy between the two because, you know, the receptive, adaptive Galenko temperament doesn't have much energy, whereas ENFJ is linear assertive and has more energy. So it's hard to go to that mode for anything longer than a short period. Oh.
I don't know if it's a 9 thing or some other kind of thing, but I know of no thing that can dependably excite me.
Right. Oh, okay. So yeah, tactical and strategic, both of the latter more prone to be pragmatic in their use of words and tools, and therefore less in compliance with regional norms. Okay. This is not to say that some ways of working are beyond the ken of counsellors, but it is to say that the further they venture from diplomatic mediation, the less support their brain will give them, the less they will practice, and the less efficient will they become in their role enactments. Still, each of the 4 kinds of brains has built-in versatility in giving wide latitude in choice of role. Diplomatic contenders are beyond compare as counsellors. Advisement is the side of diplomatic mediation that focuses on helping people to realize their potentials, and both kinds of enterprising idealists have an unusually strong desire to contribute to the welfaring and well-being of others and genuinely enjoy mentoring their companions toward greater personal fulfillment. Is that true of you, Sanna?
I think so. I think it's I think I think I have really a strong desire to help people realize their potential, find out who they are so that they can contribute globally and hence improve the entire world. So I just approach it one person at a time.
Right. And in that sense, that's how the NFJs are enterprising, in that they are going towards these objectives. And because they're going towards these directives, that then start being being directive as part of that.
Yeah, if you're not directive, I think there's more chance that they will just ignore what you say.
Yeah.
Depends on the person.
Yeah.
But if they think you're just talking for the sake of talking, they might not pay attention as much as when you're being directive.
And in fact, probably, and I would think the STP is, well, certainly ESTP would be, well, they are your jewel, and they would be responsive to your way of counselling because it's like they respect action. Okay, tell me what to do. If I agree with it, I'll do it.
Yeah, anyone that has a goal-oriented way of thinking will, I think, appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, and all the Beatons are directive in their interaction style. I don't know about LSI, but I imagine LSI would be directive.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it seems to be like it's just a natural way of communication within the beta quadrant, as far as I can tell.
And whereas alphas are all informing.
Yeah.
I think I can explain that sentence about like role of counselor in diplomatic contenders, because when people, I'm not a professional counselor, but people sometimes approach me as a counselor, and when they come, basically they want to ask me, I'm conflicted about this and that. Please help me out. So that's how I would sum it up. And if there is an interpersonal conflict, it's kind of like interpersonal conflict in the sense that it needs mediators.
Oh, sorry.
Because the parts of you talk to one another, kind of like sides of the diplomatic conflict.
Do you find that when somebody approaches you and they ask for your help, that somehow in some weird manner you often do actually have the answers that they're seeking?
Well, most of the time.
Yeah, because it's weird, because it's often stuff that I didn't know I knew. It's just it just gets triggered when somebody asks a specific question.
I think it's about the control function. You know more than you think because nobody asked you before.
Yes, yeah, something like that.
There you go. That's your magic power that you wanted, Sanna. That's your magic power.
Magic power?
Yeah. This idea of coming up with stuff that I didn't know I knew this. Where did this come from?
Yeah.
So you always wanted one. That's about it. The magic power of the...
No, I wanted the real magic powers, like telepathy and you know, all that stuff.
Yeah, all the predicting the future.
Well, yeah.
Seeing the trend.
Yeah, for some reason, all the witches I know are ESTJ.
That's probably why the ESTJ females were, oh, you old witch. Right, just because they're
very curious about it. It's the Delta thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Those who play the role of counselor efficiently, the role of counselor, are scarce, little more than 1% of the population, which is too bad considering their irreplaceable usefulness in the social order. Although these idealists tend to be private, sensitive persons and thus are not usually visible to others, they work intensely with those close to them, quietly exerting their influence behind the scenes with their families, friends and colleagues. I think you're in agreement with that, Sanna?
I think that's extremely true.
Right.
The only challenge is finding a way to make a living with this.
Right. Well, I mean,
there's an interesting thing about INFJs. They usually, like, when they're in a group, like working on something, very often nobody can tell specifically what they do, but everybody agrees that whatever they do, you know, a great job of. About that elusive something. And when they leave that workplace, somehow the group may fall apart.
That's their magic power. Another magic power. Right then. Now we start to talk more about the type on a personal level and less about them in the role of counselor. So there you go, Sanna, if you want to read that one, please. Paragraph number 11.
Counselors can be hard to get to know. They have an unusually rich introspective consciousness, but they are reserved and tend not to share either their thoughts or their feelings with other than those few they trust. With their families, certainly, they are not reluctant to express their thoughts and feelings, their face lighting up with the positive but darkening like a rain cloud with the negative. Because of their inclination to attribute their own thoughts and feelings to others, they can be angered, saddened, or frightened by others when others are far from having the thoughts or feelings that counselors unwittingly attribute to them. I think that's pretty much what I said earlier, that I will be way more expressive with the closer you are, the more expressive I get.
Yeah.
And if it's somebody I'm really close to, then there is almost no filter.
Right. And also, that might be... Also, you got the supervisee shift of where you're thinking about... At that close range, you're going to be more FE and SE. So it's like more expressive and more directive. Or it's like with the power sensing there. I think Victor called it emotional pressure when I asked him to describe the social mission block of ESFJ.
Yeah, I actually, I kind of gauge the level of a relationship partially based on how open I feel I can be with them instinctively.
Right.
Like if I have any doubts about whether I can open up to them, then I know that there is stuff in between that needs to be resolved.
Right. Here we go. Number 12. At the same time, friends who have known them for many years find facets of character emerging that come as a surprise. Not that counselors are inconsistent. They value their integrity a great deal, but they have mysterious, intricately woven characteristics that sometimes puzzle even them as they introspect. What do you think of that?
I have no idea. I think you would have to ask somebody who knows me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. Okay, I'll give you intricately woven characteristics points. Right.
Okay.
The fours will like to hear that. I think I've even put that. This paragraph is for the fours. They like to hear that. A paragraph for E1s and E4s.
Well, yeah, I mean, sure, but I mean, I can't prove that it's correct.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I was just saying that.
I wonder if he got that line from the Runaway Bride.
Well, maybe. I mean, he was pretty old when he wrote this.
Like, I'm quirky and mysterious in a way that even I can fully understand. And it was not self-description. It was description by a friend, kind of from the first.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, what Keirsey wrote in Please Understand Me Too is that they're good at working with people because they're complicated themselves. And so because these INFJ resemblers have a lot of personal problems, they can sort of relate to people on that level.
Yeah. I think it's a requirement to have gone through your own issues and figured them out before you can even try to help somebody else with similar issues.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and also, did you sometimes in counseling, do you sometimes tell people what you've been through that's similar?
Almost
not if, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that people tend to listen to. It makes them more comfortable.
It depends on who they are. If it's a client that I don't necessarily personally know very well, I'm not going to do that very much. But if it's a friend, then it's going to be more of a give and take kind of a sharing situation.
And you can see how that improves rapport, because it's like, oh wow, this person understands. They've been through something very similar.
Yes, but there's also the danger that the person having the problem might think that you're trying to turn the issue into yourself rather than listening to them.
And as you've said before, that you don't want the client to become too dependent on you.
No, that too. But more, I also don't want to give them the impression that I care about myself in that situation more than them.
Yeah, I gotcha. So, just on this subject of rapport, do you always got it in the back of your mind about you want to get enough rapport, but you don't want to get so close to them that they might get attached to you too much?
Oh yeah, that's automatic. You have to find the right distance.
Right. What have we got here? Okay, yeah, number 13. Here, the E4s all like this. All NFs will like this. Because of their vivid imaginations, counsellors are seen as more poetic and mystical than others. As writers, their novels, plays, and poems are flowed and laced with metaphor, the latter sometimes strained, such as to require leaps of imagination by the reader. And when Maria can come back, she can probably comment on that, because she writes poetry and
I have some poems that are probably very metaphorical.
Yeah.
Like I don't write poetry. I'm not really into poetry, but there were a few times in my life when I was compelled to write something, and I did. I can show them off air. I'm not gonna share them with the world at this point.
Okay. If anyone out there wants to listen to a musical group with I call them purple lyrics, and that was like Simon Le Bon was like, he fancied himself as a poet before he joined Duran Duran. So a lot of Duran Duran's lyrics are very purple and they get like overly poetic. Right. But yeah, I mean, I like that. I mean, I like a bit of poetry. I mean, I don't like lyrics that are dull, but it can go too far. It's like, so and also in Victor's school calls the I.E.I the lyric, but what it means by that is it's a kind of Russian poetry that's sort of, so it's best to, I would translate it to lyric poet, so that people don't get confused with what it means by lyric. Because then people might think, oh, composer, as in songwriter.
I think it's like as opposed to like epic literature.
Right.
Or lyric literature reflects like personal dynamics of somebody. So how you feel about certain stuff and how you develop in that respect. So that's what Russians refer to as lyric.
So, Maria, do you think that's fair, paragraph number 13? Because of their vivid imaginations, counsellors are often seen as more poetic and mystical than others. As writers, their novels, plays, and poems are florid and laced with metaphor, the latter sometimes strained, such as to require leaps of imagination by the reader.
Definitely agree about metaphor and about being seen as poets, because sometimes they like their TI, which is responsible for like picking up language for all things you have to deal with, is sort of weak, and they sometimes overcome it by using metaphor instead of explaining things the normal way.
Yeah. It's easier to use a metaphor sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you talk about deeper stuff that is typically discussed, and also have to use metaphor because no language exists for this.
I have a book for you, Maria, that you will love because it has all these exercises in it. It's written by the songwriting guru Pat Patterson, who also teaches poetry, and he has a PhD in English literature. Pat Patterson.
Yeah.
And it's called Songwriting Without Boundaries, and it's all exercises. First of all, it's object writing, which is like just describing things and people and whatever, just in terms of all of the senses. And then it's using metaphors, different kinds of metaphors, getting metaphors from nouns, collisions, and basically I'm working my way through this book, and I think you would love the book as well. So he's is a big professor at the Berklee College of Music.
I have something to say about INFJs,
Go on.
which has to do with what you say. Sometimes, like, what really infuriates me often is like when you do something, when people see you do something kind of moderately well, like painting or singing or something, they usually, like, very often they will say, "Oh, this is really nice. You should go take a class on this." And you know what? My semi-dual shift, which is responsible for my creativity, my like hobbies and stuff, is into an SE management type, which needs a lot of freedom. So when I create, I need all the freedom I can get. I hate people giving me assignments. If I'm gonna do that, it's gonna be all, you know, homeschooling and summer holidays, not classes. I want to, if I need to learn, I will teach myself at my pace. So, you know, when I get into like the moments when somebody suggests assignments for me, it's usually uncomfortable.
I'm completely self-taught when it comes to art as well.
So I think I was right when saying that it's an INFJ thing, because I can back it up with theory. It's about the what you shift into.
Yeah, and Sanna's has some pretty darn good technique for someone who's self-taught. Right, now the other Ben there is not gone into a sort of contemplative mode. It's just that laptop is shut off because I didn't put the cooler on. So I will be back on webcam shortly. So number 14. This will be more on this thing about the. Here we go. Of the idealists, these are the ones prone to select liberal arts as a college major, and they may be attracted, may be attracted to narrative writing as a profession. In all their communications, they are masters of the metaphor and will naturally define a thing in terms of something else. Something far afield. Wait a minute. They will naturally define a thing in terms of something else, something far afield from it. Their talent for metaphorical words, both written and vocal, is usually directed towards communicating with people in a personalized way. Counsellor writers comment that they write when talking to themselves. Wait a minute, I'll say that again. Counsellor writers comment that they write when talking to themselves about a particular person, whereas writing to a faceless audience leaves them uninspired.
I think that last one is definitely true. I'm not really a writer. I have, however, used writing in my previous jobs to very successfully. But I would not want to do that as a profession.
Right.
I used to be a journalist, and it was I was doing a good job, but it was kind of there was a lot of anguish associated with it, because you have that quality obsession if you're an INFJ, and you like there is most INFJs have some sort of perfectionist streak about them.
Oh, I definitely do. My problem in that job was that it was about quantity rather than quality a lot of the time.
Maria, do you think the perfectionistic qualities have something to do with the TI?
Well, TI is like a function of like when you sporadically produce a lot. It's like a like geyser, or whatever you call it.
Yeah, the geyser.
Which shoots like once a day, but very powerfully.
Oh yeah, and then when it's not there, then
you're
it is
like
nothing.
yeah, when you're done, you're really exhausted.
Yeah, then you can't do anything until you have the next inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. So the next one is we're talking more about the type. Here we go. Counsellors are often scholarly high achievers who exhibit an ostentatious linguistic creativity. They take their work seriously and enjoy academic activity, but they can also exhibit qualities of perfectionism and put more into a task than may be justified by the nature of the task. And I've written here, Maria, ask Maria, Sanna and Jonathan if they think that this is related to TE break.
I was actually thinking about it when I first read it, and I think it can be, because if it's a TE area, then this would apply. But I also think that it will apply to non-TE topics, in that you want to do the thing very thoroughly.
I would say that first of all, there is that quality obsession that I mentioned, which has, in my opinion, it has to do with romanticizing SI, which is kind of responsible for quality. You want everything that you have done, like, have a very smooth finish.
Yeah.
So, but also INFJs and ISFJs sort of have, sometimes they kind of wander in the dark, trying to estimate their own level of professionalism. They need a lot of feedback from other people to see how professional they are. So sometimes they want to err on the side of caution.
That makes sense to me.
I also think that it has to do with long-term thinking, so that you don't want to have to come back and redo something because you didn't do it properly the first time.
We're also like positivist NI types, and we think that if we do too good of a job on something, it's still like personal baggage. It is, so it's kind of justified anyway.
I don't understand what you mean.
I mean that if you overdo something, you just hone your skills.
Okay.
So it still makes some sense.
Right, yeah, you're practicing. Yeah, okay.
So you are saving for the future, just in terms of skills. That's it.
Yeah, you're saving time also. You're not only do you not have to come back and do this again, you actually learn to do it better for a future purpose.
One of the things I was thinking about this with the TE break was TE is very much about what is productive and how much is, and I think the TE person, they might have a great sense of knowing how much effort to put into a task.
I think so, but only when it's a TE activity. Like, I don't know if that applies to creating art, for example, because that's a very different kind of topic.
Yeah, and maybe a TE, an artist is more. Go on, Maria.
I think if it's kind of a little bit different from, for instance, ESTJ and ENTJ, because ENTJ is a left type, so they think in terms of minimal viable products.
Yes, yes, that comes through in the profile.
Right types may be more thorough, just for the sake of being right type and like going into detail.
And also for temperament reason, ESTJ is going to think about their reputation a bit more. And, well, what I sort of mean by that is if we're using Keirsey temperaments, the ESTJ will care more about what people think of them.
They're not very like uniform about this. For instance, if they ESTJ can still have like outdated equipment if it does the job, and they don't care like what other departments can make fun of them all for that reason. And another ESTJ can sell the things which are just past the shelf life, because it's like for a while after shelf life it's still legal to sell and so on. So like as long as it's legal, they don't mind people talking behind their back that they do this and that, because it's still, you know, the matter of efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, so that's an example. I can give you a real world example of how, say, society can complicate something like that. So, for example, and this is something I learned from somebody who was involved in the fitness area, and that is all of these gyms are associated with the regulators, and it's every time they come out with new safety requirements, that means that they have to get rid of perfectly good, or they have to get rid of a load of equipment, can't sell it on to people because it doesn't qualify for the new safety standards. So it's like every 5 years or so, they have to get new equipment. And they can't sell that equipment because it's illegal to sell it on, because it's not quite past those next safety requirements. And what that then acts as is that acts as a barrier of entry for anybody who wants to start their own gym, because they realize, hang on a minute, I've got to replace all my equipment in another 5 years. So that's a little bit of a side issue, but that was a thing that came up with somebody who I know who was talking about starting a gym, and said that if it was 20 years ago, they would have been able to do it, but couldn't do it now because of all the regulations. And that was just what Maria said there about selling on equipment and using old equipment. Right, sometimes you can't do that because of the social field around them. So there's what someone's preference would be, and then what they can actually do because of the society they're in. What have we got here? Here we go, more FE stuff. Counsellors thrive in occupations that involve interacting with people, nurturing their personal development, especially on a one-to-one basis. As with all idealists, teaching, preaching, and healing hold attraction. Although counsellors must develop an expressive attitude in such professions, which for them requires a great deal of energy. Counsellors make outstanding individual counsellors who have a unique ability to get in touch with their clients' thoughts and feelings, though they are also the most vulnerable of all to the eruption of their own forgotten negative thoughts and feelings. Ooh. What do you think of that, Sanna, in that?
Well, first of all, the last part is exactly what I was saying earlier, that you have to go through your own crap before you can even begin to help somebody else with it. Because otherwise it's going to, well, this is going to happen. And this is not something that should happen in a counseling situation, because not only does it mean that you don't really know what you're talking about, you're going to be biased. Right. So in my opinion, you should only counsel about issues that you have resolved within yourself to a certain degree.
That's
As
good.
for, well, yeah, definitely nurturing personal development, one-to-one basis, yeah, for sure. I think that healing, I was just reading this, and I think that healing bit is interesting, because I feel like that's my next easiest. And I think my art kind of falls into that category. I can't really, I can't perfectly articulate why, but I think that's the case.
Do you think that you would maybe like to, you may have done this before, you may have told me about this, but sort of like the therapeutic art, getting people to express things through art?
Well, yeah, I study art therapy, but that's still in the counseling area. Right. That's not going to be me making art. That's me helping people through their use of art. But my own art, the one I create myself, That I feel is more in the healing category, in that I'm expressing myself, but I'm expressing myself in ways that hopefully speak to other people and have this healing effect on them, or maybe that they just like it, I don't know. But either way, I think it's in that category. And I recently realized that counseling in the Keirsey sense does not really take energy for the most part. I can continue doing it for a very long time.
Yeah.
But creating art, even if I really want to do it, does take energy, and I can't keep it up forever.
There you go, folks. There's Sanna with her art. There's proof that she painted it. Either that was really good photoshopping. So, and then I thought this might be a good example of. Maria, do you think this shows quite well the vortex synergetic form of cognition? In
she's muted right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was just muting because of I have the outside noise, but I noticed that most vertical minds kind of express it through their art somehow. Like they would have it in their music. It would go like in waves or spirals, and or in like William Morris was also a vertical type, ESFJ. And there would be like repeating patterns and kind of a little bit of fractal stuff, and also they tend to have like natural patterns and natural objects, like
Right.
what is called organic forms, like whatever they are picturing, there will be organic forms.
So these are the positivist dynamic types, folks. So you got ENTJ, ESFJ, INFJ, and SLI. Yeah, we don't quite know what that correlates to in Keirsey types. Oh yeah, there's an ENFP. I just like right. There we go. So Sanna's artwork, and then we're going to get back to. Oh, we're on that one or the other one? Yeah, all right, we're actually on this one. Right, number. Right, eruption of their own forgotten negative thoughts and feelings. So you can see here that it's sort of toned down the. It's really toned down this stuff from the magical abilities to just the bits that touch on the unconscious.
Yeah, I kind of appreciate that they dropped the clearly magical thinking phrasing from this description.
Yeah, but all he said was something like they are the most likely of the types to have,
Right.
and then mention the magical powers. What have I put here? I've put 2 little asterisks there. Oh yes, unconscious stuff. Yeah, and then we've got here. So we've got here number 17. Go on.
Wait, why is it unconscious stuff?
Well, because if it's forgotten, then it's in the unconscious.
Oh, okay.
The eruption of there, so it's like the lava of stuff underneath the surface. Right. Oh dear, I'm getting metaphorical. Perhaps I'm INFJ as well. Right. Counsellors may choose corrective counselling, marriage, family, and child counselling, career counselling, or supportive social work, or may choose to teach or to write in these fields. Whatever their choice, they generally are successful in any form of counselling because their personal warmth, their enthusiasm, their insight, their devotion, and their originality can be brought into play. What do you think of that?
I think I kind of responded to the word magic, and I was going to say that I heard Marianne Williamson say that there is a marked difference between miracles and magic, in that magic is when you want deity to do something for you, and miracle is when you are looking to do what the deity wants you to do. Like, and I think that INFJ are not into magic per se. They would rather know what their God wants them to do, and sometimes they kind of do good guessing about that because of their NI.
I'm not into faith of any kind. I want to actually find out what's real.
I was just pointing out like how the word magic contradicts the nature of INFJ, and that's just a linguistical.
Yeah, I think. I mean, what we're talking about.
What we want is miracles, not magic.
Yeah, but the previous description in a previous book had this very.
It is.
Very.
There is.
Yeah.
It's just says the most.
Phenomena.
It's just the most likely.
Yeah, but still, if you're trying to be taken seriously, you shouldn't be saying that kind of.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I mean, we are. I mean, it's in the Jungian version. I mean, he has the type. He has things like the introverted, intuitive type has their ear to the wall of history.
Well, yeah, he was very. Yeah, he was out there, but
yes.
I mean, Keirsey doesn't try to do that, so.
Yeah. I mean, there are episodes of foreknowledge, though. I mean, well, I think what it is they're thinking about the future so much that every now and then they're bound to be right.
There is foreknowledge, but it's always going to be on some kind, based on some kind of data. It doesn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
At least I think so.
No,
I mean, it would be really cool if it did.
I think that David Mark Keirsey, the son, said that somebody else may have helped with the writing of Please Understand Me Too in terms of the style of it. So maybe that was more due to that person than due to, because we don't know how much was involved at the editing stage, because it is written in a far different tone than Personology. Personology is more INTP-ish.
Well, I think it's a better description.
What, the one that we've been looking at before this?
Yeah.
Right, so let's get back to I think we're on this one, yes. This one. So this is Personology, and this is Keirsey with his INTP mode, not watered down. I mean, if you had just read this as your first typology book, it would be a bit of a bit like reading a textbook.
Maybe, but it's not that difficult to understand.
No, it's just difficult because if you're coming over it from MBTI and you're used to using all the letters, and then you have to learn a whole lot of new jargon stuff.
Well, good for you. Do it.
Yeah. That's the only difficulty. But the actual jargon in itself, it does make it very clear. Get in touch with the client's thoughts and feelings. Is that just natural for you? You just feel it?
You just see it. It's just information that's there. I don't even know how it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, it's called having feelings, Ben, and senses. It's just there. And I get that. And I'm more sensitive to that now than I used to be. The thing is now I see all that stuff, but I do not have a clue how to react to it. So
it's interesting, actually. I wonder what the difference is between what you see and what we see. Like, do we see more than you do? Or do we just see the same thing and you don't know what to do with it?
I don't know what to do with it, because it's like I know, and I feel like I feel that these uncomfortable emotions. But you see, I identify as 7, and 7 doesn't like dealing with their uncomfortable emotions. So sevens might not be the best in the counsellor role, because they would try and persuade them to like change their mind and do something else, and it would never actually deal with the problem.
So do you see what you see, but do you also know what it is that you see? Do you understand why it's there?
Yeah, it's just that I don't know how to help the person.
But you do see the kind of the causal relationship that led that person in that situation with those feelings.
Yeah, I would do if I had the information. Yes, because INTP
well, that's
is all
kind
about
of
causality.
information that I.E.I is going to very quickly pick up on.
Yeah.
Which is the few questions.
Now, now apparently Linda Behrens, she got in contact with David Keirsey because she was training to be a counsellor under him. And Carol Linden said that she did that for a while, but she said she got bored of it because she would know and as you said there, you have to wait for the counselee, the client, to sort of get to that point. She said that Linda worked it out. Eventually, she got to be able to work it out much quicker than the client, and it got boring for her waiting for the client to recognize what the client had to do.
Yeah, that's when you push them, or you just tell them that they might be getting better help elsewhere, or you just wait. You have multiple options.
And for Linda Behrens, not being an INFJ resembler, not being an I.E.I resembler, it's like she's just doing I'll just wait.
Yeah, sometimes you have to wait. Sometimes you can't push because it's the wrong timing for it.
No. Right, okay, their originality. The E4 and INFX resemblers are smiling.
Yeah, is that really type specific, or is it just Enneagram 4s wanting to be?
Yeah, I'm just saying that if you're an E4 and you're an INFJ and you're reading this, you'll smile at that bit whenever it talks about, even though it's not talking about you, if it talks about the type that you identify with and talks about how creative they are, because they'll like that.
This is why I don't like the whole, oh, you know, I.E.Is are 1% of population, you know, you're special kind of focus.
Yeah, but to me, that isn't, because to me, I just think, okay, so that's 3 million Americans.
Well, yeah, but it's still going to apply to the false sense of wanting to be special.
Oh, and it's also like 1%, really, that's one person on your street. So that's not that rare.
Yeah, but it's still going to be more rare than somebody who's a type that is 14% or 20% or whatever they are. It's still going to appeal to the desire to be unique and special, which in my opinion is not healthy.
Yeah. I mean, I think the E4 INFJs would wish that, oh, I don't want to be 1%. I want to be 1 in a million. No, I want to be 1 in a billion.
I want to be the only one.
Right. Oh, no, they might want, no, I want a few people who can understand me. Right. Anyhow, we're getting into cliches and stereotypology.
Just me complaining about it.
What have we got here? Oh, here we go. 18. Okay, I'll over to you, Sanna, for number 18. Although they're talented.
Although they are talented in work that requires private face-to-face encounters, counselors also do well when in contact with groups of people, providing, of course, that the personal interactions are not superficial. They are highly sensitive in their relating to others and tend to work effectively in institutions of many kinds. They value staff harmony and want groups to interact smoothly and pleasantly, making every effort themselves to contribute to that end. As employees or employers, counselors are concerned with people's emotions and desires and are able to act as a barometer of what they call the feeling tone of an organization. They are good detectives, looking as they usually are for clues that guide them to their clients' hopes, wants, and needs. They want to please others, but more than that, they want to help others find their way.
Now, I'll just say about these 3 asterisks here around staff harmony, and I've put, there we go. Oh dear, Sanna has just deducted a point from this profile. That's a shame because Keirsey was doing so well. Because you don't like the harmony word.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's the harmony again. And as I said before, it's not the main concern for me. I don't dismiss it, but it's also not the most important. To me, growth is most important. And if harmony is required for growth, then fine. And a lot of the time, harmony is fine because there is no actual growth happening anyway. So whatever. But it's just not my focus.
In that paragraph, what do you think about the stuff in red and yellow? Sorry, in pink and yellow.
And that is funny because I have always seen myself that way. Like I can tell, I can sense the overall vibe of the organization, and I have felt that way in a company before, and it was quite frustrating because I tried to bring it up and felt that I wasn't really able to convey it because I felt like it was my job to feel this, to be able to tell, but I could not communicate to the people that would have been able to do something about it. I really tried, and it was very frustrating.
Do you think part of that was that you might have been going up against a kind of thinking you didn't understand that well because it was like TE kind of thinking?
It was there was definitely a lot of TE, yeah. And so yeah, something like that. Also, I think one of the problem was that I let other people give me suggestions as to which people in the management I should talk to instead of going with my original gut feeling. And I think had I done what I instinctively felt was were the right people, I think it might have gone better. I can't tell because I didn't do it, but it was one of my lessons to stop listening to other people and just go with what I feel is the right thing to do.
Right. That's good. Thanks for that. So number 19 is about, I think now it's about comparing the various roles and how easy it is for the type. Maria is back.
I was going to say that the harmony is very often instrumental in growth because under the fight or flight response, very often not a lot of growth can be done. Stress is basically what brings out the worst in people, and that's not what we want.
It's interesting that you say that because I have the exact opposite opinion. I believe that nobody ever grows unless they are forced to, unless there is some kind of disharmony that they have to resolve in their life.
Stress are two different things. You need your force to be applied in the most peaceful manner. I mean the fight and flight response that is kind of instinctive, and when people usually tend to go back into like they're more defensive and
Maria, could you tell us what that looks like for, say, SLE?
What?
Could you give us an example of what that looks like for SLE? Because then if we talk about a specific type, you and Sanna might be able to like see things more clearly about where each of us coming from.
I don't know if I can give such like this kind of example, but I would need to think. I cannot do it off the top of my head, but I believe that people need to kind of be brought to awareness that things are not going the right way. But people tend to be less aware and more while they're more defensive. They kind of hide their head in the sand more when they're stressed out.
True, but people also don't want to change by default. So if there is nothing forcing them to change because they can just keep on going the way they have, they're just going to stay the same for the most part.
I would. It reminds me of the when I was a college student, I was very interested in thermodynamics because it introduced to me a concept of balance and like perfectly balanced like force application. Like when you have a chemical reaction which is basically another kind of force. If it goes in a balanced way, it's more effective.
How is it more effective, though? Because this goes against what I have observed.
I can see both viewpoints on this.
There's I don't know how to explain it. It's just like we chemists call it either thermodynamic control or kinetic control. Like thermodynamic control is like the chemical heaven, and the kinetic control is where you kind of have some kind of deficiency or external limits.
So when it comes to people, why is it that being in a state of harmony is going to help them grow better than being...
It's very similar to having to love a person first before they do something that you consider necessary. Like there has to be a share of a share of tough love and share of the love which is not determined by people being right or successful or anything.
Are you saying that there just needs to be like a right balance of all of these aspects?
It has to be just right, because if you want too much from a person, they will go into defenses. And
yeah, okay. I do agree that there has to be a balance between, well, the harmony and the challenge. And what the balance is depends.
Growth happens by like baby steps, and if you pull the person too much, they usually back off.
Okay, yeah, I agree that you should not push too much. I think for counseling, it's important to know when to push, how much to push, and to not do it too little or too much.
So usually, like in many cases, and I noticed it with a lot of people, especially NTs, you need to, if I'm not a professional counselor, but when I kind of make my point to a person that some changes are due, I really need to kind of make a step back and say, but it's okay if you don't do this. This is just what's going to happen. It's not the end of the world, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, some people need to be calmed down.
I'm okay with it being any old way. And then they feel the freedom. They when they don't feel pushed, and they can just make their own thinking and compare the consequences and so on. They don't feel any they don't really feel any force or any like too much dogma applied to them or whatever it may be, there is more likelihood that the change is going to happen.
Yeah, but this is also after the challenge has already occurred. So you're basically just trying to relax them to deal with the challenge that already is there, right?
And yeah, but when you say like I'm good either way, it's also like maintaining harmony, and for the sake of that harmony they actually can do more than with too much force applied.
Yeah, okay. I see what you mean. When I say that we need challenges, what I mean is that we need that to kind of ignite the desire to change, and then how you go through the process that can involve, you know, harmonious aspects just fine. It's just that there has to be that initial reason why somebody wants to change in the first place. And that is usually some kind of a disharmonious event in their life.
So what I call thermodynamic control is like when every change happens by infinitely small steps.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it is usually step by step.
Yeah, so that's what part of my fascination with that concept is that I saw it working with people as well. You even like for myself, when I know I need to change it, I can only change by tiny fraction of a step.
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely. Almost no one ever changes like all at once.
But
it's always going to be
harmony means that you kind of feel accepted in this particular thing. Like a person is basically happy with you where you are, knowing that when you can change, you will do it.
Right.
They just point out the direction of the change and maybe cheer you up, saying that like when you will inevitably be there. Like I see you being there after a while, and I'm gonna greet you there.
Do you ever push people in the middle when you feel that they are getting a little bit lazy about their progress? Or do you just wait for them to figure it out for themselves?
Well, I think we are the type which is like conceptual, and when we don't get tired of explaining stuff to people. So explaining may seem like pushing to some, but for me, like when I just keep explaining, I don't consider that pushing.
Maria, when you explain something, do you explain the same thing again, or do you explain, or do you explain the same thing in the same? Is it like a record where you're playing the same thing? Sorry, where you're saying the same thing and explaining it in the same way, or do you explain it in different ways every time?
I think because circumstances change all the time, there's no need to explain same things in the same way most of the time.
Right.
There's always another turn of events. You can use it to illustrate the same point, but still. Yeah, I'm nearly. I almost have to go. So if you have something specific to ask me, you might as well do so.
Go on, Sanna.
I'm just. I don't have anything specific. I'm just trying to compare our methods, I suppose. I think I'm more.
Well, you're more directive. I mean,
I'm a little more aggressively directive, I think.
And plus, Maria identified.
I may be very pushy, as in, like when I see when I walk down the street and I see like some lazy kids sitting down, banging a glass bottle against the curb, I will tell them, you guys get up and pick up all the glass immediately. So because that stupid activity kind of interferes with the growth and the good of the humanity, right?
That's a little bit of the cooperative thing coming in, where Keirsey.
So if I'm sure that something wrong is happening, I will not be shy to actually tell people what to do.
Yeah, I remember that. You said that, Maria. It is an odd combination, 9-wing 1, where the 1 comes through.
Well, I think I explored both of my wings at some point.
Yep. It's fair enough. So what we got here? We've got, so number 19. To appreciate just how versatile the brain can be in enabling individuals to be efficient in enacting roles, employing methods and achieving results, let us examine a graphic display of that versatility. By doing so, we will keep many different roles in view at once so that we can make comparisons. No doubt each of us is confined to only one role played with maximum efficiency. In the case of diplomatic contending, high efficiency is given to only a small percentage of those endowed with a diplomatic brain, and the achievement of such individuals comes to our notice only when a spectacular success in some practices reported, such as Milton Erickson, who David Mark Keirsey called a genius, hypnotherapist. And modern hypnosis is based on his language patterns. In fact, only a fraction of his language patterns. Right, so here we go. So this is stuff I'll read. I'll go through bits of this. So this is the theory about, right, on the job, at the work site, or in the career niche, the diplomatic contender tends to be the most effective as a counsellor. Oh yes, usually even more effective than as an educator. Though both are enterprise mentors, because both NFJs, the former ever on the lookout for clues to a client's most fitting role, so as INFJ mode, which the counsellor urges clients to consider, thus enabling them to take on a role that suits their talent in word and tool use. On the other hand, if the counsellor takes on a role as an advocator or reconciler, so these are, as I've put here, NiFx and FINX. So these are roles more associated with the other quadra of NFs, the NFPs. Then much more practice will be required to maintain and increase effectiveness. This owing to the steep decline in native ability from job to job. Thus, if the counsellor IQ is very high, say 150, then the educator IQ will be less, say about 140 to 145, and the advocator IQ around 130 to 135. The reconciler IQ may be 125 to 130. Since idealists like guardians instinctively comply with regional traditions, customs, and conventions, the logistical roles, supervisor, inspector, supplier, protector, are more likely to become their second suit. And here's a key point. Otherwise, what usually is their third suit, the 4 strategic roles, mobilizer, arranger, modeler, designer, can occasionally become their second suit. So if I would say that happened with Maria, where she went into chemistry. Before that, she had a beneficiary shift to I.E.I. She became a mathlete, and then she was into studying mathematics, and then she switched to chemistry, and then she left the field of chemistry.
I think that also happened to me.
Go on.
I went into more NT, into a more NT career path at first in my 20s.
Do you think that was encouraged because of your father and just an upbringing thing?
Partially, but also because I was already very much into computers.
Did you say you're using them from the age of 4?
Yeah, I think it was 4 when my father brought the first PC home.
Right. Right. So as you can see here, planner. So that would be so according to this, the easiest role for you to play out of the NTs would be like the INTJ role of like planning stuff ahead. What can go wrong? So it's because it's like the negative half of the NI. It's like, okay, this can go wrong. What happened? How do we avoid this thing going wrong? So you can see how it's like, it is like the NI minus concept of minimizing the negatives, minimizing the number of things that can go wrong. So in NLP terms, it's away from something rather than towards it. And what I've written in the strategic intellect notes is that because INTJ has, as you would say in Sanna speak, because the NI is 4-dimensional in INTJ, they also have their toward goals as well as their away goals. So toward that thing and away from that failure, even though the overall cast of their thoughts will be trying to get away from a negative result. Right. We will talk more about that when we do the strategic intellect. Should they happen upon one of these jobs, their lifelong search for there we go. Otherwise, what usually is their third suit can occasionally become their second suit, should they happen upon one of these jobs in their lifelong search for significance. So you can see there that they're doing that for an NF reason. Significance. Well, everyone, I suppose, but you know what I mean. They can do it for the NF reasons and self-pres reasons. Indeed, and because they're interested in it. Because they've got that abstract thing in common, like in Sanna's case. Indeed, they say to themselves, who am I and what can I do with my life? As for their fourth suit, the tactical roles, promoter, the con man, crafter, the mechanic, pretty close to SLI in Socionics, the performer, the show player in English, or actor and actress, and the composer. Even when they happen upon some of these aesthetic activities, they are likely to wonder about them for a while, even trying 2 or 3 of their many forms, soon, however, passing on to more significant and self-fulfilling occupations. There might be a slight, not necessarily contradiction, but there's an interesting bit where, well, he's got composer low down for INFJ, but early on he did say that they made good poets and they were good at metaphor. So
yeah, I don't really know what a composer in Keirsey does.
It's like a songwriter and the composing of something like that.
How is that different from painting, for example?
Well, that's a good point, since that the ISFP is maybe in terms, but how much energy do you have for it though?
For what?
For your painter?
It depends. It varies greatly. But I do know that it takes energy rather than giving it.
Right. So it might just be that even though you enjoy, I mean, well, you do the logistical stuff because you have to.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's like, well, you're good at the painting. We know you're good at it, but it's like the amount of energy that you have for it is not necessarily, oh, I've got to get this done. I'm gonna spend 6 hours a day doing this.
It really goes in cycles. Sometimes
Right.
I do that. Sometimes I can have a month or 2 when I'm exactly like that. I paint all the time, and then I can have a long break when I don't paint at all. So it depends.
Yeah, but well, that's slightly where I would say in your case the theory breaks down. But I would also say that depends how much of the energy they have. But he did say earlier on, Keirsey, that, I mean, for example, he's got all this stuff about how good they are with words. Where is it? Here we go. liberal arts, masters of metaphor, professional writers, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I suppose the idea is, I mean, as it says here, they don't necessarily have the energy to do it. Anyway, this is about probability. At least he has them know as the probability of performing these roles. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I thought my art was more in the healer category, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
When it comes to my, because I had done it. First of all, I've done it when I had a difficult time in my very TE heavy job. That's when I started painting, and that's definitely when it was giving me energy, because otherwise I was super trained.
So what we can say though is that your art is more about the meaning of it. Even though your technique's very good, it's about the meaning of it. So it's like you're doing it for NF reasons.
I think I am, yeah.
So this is one of these things where you can have these types do things. So it's like when they do something that's not usual for the type that you don't read in the profiles, then it's then interesting to ask them why they are doing it. So for instance, you can have somebody who does. So for instance, you can have an SJ that gets into science. Why? To help people, to find a cure for cancer. It's like, or to, again, it's to help. There can be like an ethical reason behind it. And the same with it. So it's like working out what people's motivations are for that. And also looking into Enneagram as well can help. Although there are these patterns there that the NTs are drawn towards the STEM subjects of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but other ones can be drawn to it too. And when Keirsey Jr., David Mark Keirsey joined us last time, he mentioned an ESTJ mathematician, and he said he assumed that he would be irrational in T.
I think NFs in general are pretty often artistic, specifically painting and drawing.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair enough. You should put an asterisk there. I have said 2 pages back that they can be very creative people. This is usually verbally. However, if they do art, then it will be art full of a lot of meaning, rather than
lots of metaphors.
Yeah. And where the art is not in itself, it's more as a vehicle for their deep feelings and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a way to convey what's going on somewhere inside.
Right, and so let's see what audience. We probably still have a few people at the moment. We have 3 viewers at the moment, so we can see from Sanna's art that there's definitely some. So here we go. What were your thoughts about when you painted this?
It was kind of a weird process because it wasn't a lot of specific things. It was very, it was a mind state rather than, it wasn't anything specific. It was this kind of a weird mystical type of mindset that I just had. And I don't really know if there is anything specific that it represents. It has like minor details of a lot of different things.
So with these bits here on the left, more sort of negative things, and this is more a bit like hope with these green bits here?
No, it's all positive things to me.
Right. Right. And then we've got, what about this one? Did you just want to do something spacey?
Yeah, there's something similar. I just wanted to have like this space theme for it.
Oh, I noticed something. You know this color? What they did in Babylon 5, whenever you have an alien and you've got prosthetics, you've got to have a collar at the back, because if you don't, as soon as the actor or actress turns their neck, you'll get a crease in the prosthesis around the neck.
Okay.
So it's always, so when there was Jakar in Babylon 5, he always had that collar, because when you turn the head, you can't see the crease at the back because the collar's in the way. So, because I noticed that when I saw it in season 4 of Star Trek Enterprise, and I thought, no, you turn the head and you got the crease in the back. That's terrible direction. Don't shoot it from that angle. You know, because the skin naturally is so stretchy around the back of the head. So any kind of prosthesis, you will get that crease that makes it look fake.
Yeah.
And then, what about this one? What was this about?
Well, this one was interesting because I drew it over a period of probably 2 years. Like, it had several different stages. I originally painted the figure, and I think it was kind of a description of how I was feeling at the time. And rainbow colors in general are a recurring theme for me. It's just, I think it represents some kind of, for me personally, the fact that I put them in there, it's some kind of a more hopeful aspect.
One of the things that Robert McKee talks about is he talks about internal symbolism and external symbolism. So for you, the rainbow is internal symbolism because it's what's symbolic within you, rather than somebody, another artist might put something in that are externally symbolic.
I don't think I use it. I don't think I use a lot of external symbols. I think most of it is just internal. This is how I feel. I want to convey something.
Right. So what I can give folks, I can finish up with this about the difference between an internal and external image system. So this was in Robert McKee's book Story, and he gave the example of, if you have a film with lots of external imagery, then it's pretty obvious to the audience what it all means. But when he gave an example of a film where I think it was something called like Les Diaboliques or something. And it was, what he did was, the way the image system worked is things in the film, the meaning they conveyed and what they were symbol for was completely different from what they conveyed outside of the film. So it completely twisted it into its own internal image system. And so it's like, say, in poetry, where in Hamlet, there is repeating themes of things rotting and decaying. So there's something like, there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. And then there's all of these words throughout the whole thing that sort of continue that theme. And so you get these internal themes. And there's also a theme to do with glass in Chinatown. And it's something that is not, if you do the internal, and he also mocked it when directors would be ever heavy-handed with their symbolism. And he said that he gave an example of one director where he kept showing rope in various things, and he said that the theatre audience cried out, "Symbol!" So it's how well it's used. So I suggest people get that book, Story by Robert McKee. So that is the end of it. So what did you think of this hangout, Sanna?
Well, interesting. It was nice to compare two approaches to the same thing.
Yeah, and we've got some good information there from Maria. So do you think overall that the Keirsey Counsellor is pretty similar, or more similar to I.E.I than I.E.I?
Well, I think there's less focus on the counseling aspect with the I.E.I.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, there are similarities, definitely.
Yeah.
But Socionics doesn't say that you have to be a counselor to be in your optimum field.
Yeah, but it does have these sort of things. Although Victor does, like, he names the types after a profession. So it's like the analyst, the administrator, the lyric, the marshal.
Yeah.
So at least Keirsey goes through, and I think Victor does it as well. It's just that it needs to be talked about more with the shifts. Oh, this type can act like this and on this on its territory and all these other kinds of things. So right then, so I'm going to stop the hangout now. We actually was able to retain an audience, so we've got 2 viewers at the end. So hopefully you see all of it. There was lots of good stuff in this hangout, and lots of looking at the type of INFJ, I.E.I, and NiFx from 2 points of view. You would have heard stuff from Maria that not anywhere else on YouTube in English. And then also some new stuff from Keirsey that's not anywhere else on YouTube, unfortunately. So I'll stop the recording now. Bye-bye, folks.
Bye.